The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good morning, Atlanta and Philadelphia. We're modulating in both cities. I don't know how else to explain this, and I hope our guest, our expert, will get a big head from this. For the last couple of weeks, I've been in and out of the hospital due to complications from COVID. It just doesn't seem like it ever goes away. And I've had a lot of breathing problems. And one of the things I noticed is you could see two different doctors, both specializing in my case, pulmonary, and get two completely different answers. Our next guest, I believe in so much that I don't care what I have, I'm going to him first. There's only, to me, a few doctors out there that you can really trust. And our guest, Dr. Eldred Taylor, I trust him so much. I think he would have outdone, and he's an MD, by the way, I think he would have outdone all these specialists that were at the hospital. And so I love the fact that he's on our show. And thank you for the questions you've been sending in. Let's welcome Dr. Eldred Taylor.
Yes, hello. How are you doing?
Hi, Dr. Taylor. How'd you like that for a compliment?
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. I hope you feel better and stay better.
Yeah, Dr. Taylor, people don't realize that once they say you no longer have COVID, that it leaves its mark on your body. Like mine is my lungs. And it's funny, I was thinking about you in the hospital because over the last year, I've really learned and respect what you do. I respect the fact that Dr. Taylor had this great practice of OBGYN, and because of what he discovered, I'll just call it anti-aging. What he discovered, he moved his whole practice in that area. And somebody who has that much faith to do something like that is just mind-boggling. I'm so glad that we have Dr. Taylor. He's in the Atlanta area. But folks, listen, whether you're in one of the new markets we're opening up is Los Angeles. It doesn't matter what city you're in with Dr. Taylor. He can do this telemed, which is incredible because you got to do a lot of the work. You're going to have to do the saliva test. And Dr. Taylor, I cannot tell you how much respect I have for what you've done, what you're doing now, and what you're teaching our listeners now.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate it. I welcome the opportunity to try and use, all forms of communication to try and, help people take a different look at their health and actually take control of their health, to understand enough about their health so that they make good decisions. I consider doctors as advisors, not necessarily as dictators. So you can take or leave somebody's advice, but you need to have some you need to make an educated guess or educated decision. So, this gives me the opportunity to try and help educate patients how they can make good decisions, not when they're coming to me, but if they're coming to, if they're going to another doctor, that they can make an educated decision.
You talk about making an educated decision.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't, it seems like most doctors, family practice, holistic doctors, you come in and tell them you want to lose weight, and they're giving you the supplements or telling you about your diet, but they don't do what you do and try to understand what is causing, whether it's weight gain or whatever stress. And what you do in your practice is you find out what the cause is.
Yeah.
And it just makes so much more sense.
Yeah, it does. It makes it easier when you can focus on a cause instead of focusing on symptoms. That's kind of what modern medicine is. It's a symptom elimination type process, hypertension, weight gain, whatever. You may have 6 different symptoms and you walk out of the doctor office with 6 different medications or supplements or whatever. A lot of times there's a singular cause. It can be a gut issue, it can be a hormone issue, it can be a stress issue. And there's a study done several years ago that said 75 to 90% of all visits to primary care physicians was for stress-related conditions. So, stress, it can be a factor in weight gain, it can be a factor in cardiovascular disease and GI problems, and even in COVID, because stress suppresses the immune system. So if you're under stress, it may be harder to get over a COVID infection because your immune system is not functioning as it should, primarily due to stress.
Dr. Taylor, you and I are both, I would call it godly people. We're believers.
Mm-hmm.
And something came over me last night. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to ask you a question I've never asked you before.
Okay.
And I realize it is such an important question. And because I have so much trust in you, this is going to help me and probably a lot of other people like me. I am finding out that my primary care doctor
Mm-hmm.
is not really any good. And the example I'm going to give you is I had swelling in my feet. I go in and what he says is too much salt. And I was like, you can diagnose like that?
Yeah.
So my question to you is, and I am so upset because it wasn't from salt. I am so upset. What do you do when you're looking for a good primary care doctor? What should you look for?
Wow. That's tough. I mean,
Yes.
I call myself practicing functional medicine. I would tell you to look for a functional medicine doc. And, that's.
What does that mean?
Beg your pardon, what is functional medicine? Well, again, you want to find somebody who is not 100% traditional. There is some places where you can go. There's the Institute of Functional Medicine. They have a directory of doctors. There's the American Functional Medicine Association, which is something that we headed. We have a list of docs. I don't know if there's any in your area, but I would look up functional medicine doctors in your area. The difference between functional medicine and a primary care doc or internal medicine doc, we try to maximize function of your biologic systems, maximize the function of your GI system, maximize the function of your immune system, maximize the function of your hormone system, so that you can function at a high level for a long period of time. With my parents, who have both passed away, their health deteriorated over the last 10 or 15 years of their life, taking more and more medications, just getting sicker and sicker until they finally passed away. That's kind of when I made the decision that I didn't really want lived the last 10, 15, 20 years of my life not being able to function in a healthy manner. So functional medicine, that's what we look at. We don't wait till people get sick. We try to see, is a system functioning at a subpar level? How can we get it to function better? And it's not from giving medications. It's usually giving the body something that is lacking, or it has exhausted its supply of. That may be due to poor diet, or the food we eat now is not nearly as nutritious as it was 30, 40 years ago, or as nutritious as it would be if you had your own garden and you were, picking fresh fruits and vegetables right out of your garden. So that's what functional medicine is. So I would tell you, if you could find one in your area, and you're in Florida, they should be pretty abundant down there. And, places like Florida, California, the Northeast, Philadelphia, I'm not so sure, but a lot of the more progressive type states, Florida, Georgia, Atlanta is progressive. I don't know about the rest of the state. Texas, people in the Midwest, Chicago, places like that would have functional medicine docs.
I want to take this to the second part. First of all, Dr. Taylor went to one of the finest schools in the country, this little school called Emory. Mm-hmm. And I know it well because my cousin went there. Probably one of the finest facilities in the world. And so you're not just an MD, a doctor. You went to some of the finest training. And what was really, again, I'm going to take again my situation, and I know there's others out there. My pharmacist said, why are you if you're having trouble with breathing, you're taking a pill that's going to make it worse. And I said, but that's what the doctor prescribed to me.
Yeah.
And I know you see this in your practice all the time.
Yeah. So, what happens is medicine is so specialized. So if he's giving you something for the swelling in your feet, that's all he's focused on. He's not looking at all of you and saying, oh yeah, you also have a lung issue. Maybe I don't need to do that. So, you come in, and the way medicine is now, you got 15 minutes. So you can talk about one thing, and he's going to give you one or two medications to take care of that one thing. You're not given enough time to give information about your entire, problem. So that's what happens. And I also want to tell you, I went to Emory. It's considered a fine institution, but I'm going to tell you what I learned at Emory that I practice now is what I learned in the first 2 years of medical school, which is anatomy and physiology. The third and fourth year of medical school, you go in the hospital, and your residents, they tell you what treatment to give, or what prescription or what surgery to do for a certain condition. And I don't use any of that anymore. Now I practice physiologic medicine instead of pharmacologic medicine. So, that's a whole different thing. So a lot of the things that I do now, I really didn't learn at Emory. What your primary care doc is doing is what is taught in medical school. And that's a pharmacological education. A physiologic education or functional education is what you learn the first 2 years, but in medical school, they tell you to forget about it when you go into the hospital, because it's all about writing prescriptions and doing surgery. So that's the problem. The doctors are not doing anything wrong. They're doing what they've been taught to do. But I don't think that's the best way to, treat patients. Now, if you're bona fide sick, if you have a heart attack, if you get hit by a car, the last person you want to call is me, because I can't take care of you. Okay, so I know my limitations, but sometimes physicians need to know their limitations, that you can't just give a pill to everybody and think it's going to be, a wonder drug, because most of the time it's not.
Well, last time you were on with us, we got a lot of emails from it. We talked about stress.
Yeah.
And it seems like there's a lot of people out there that didn't even think about stress could be causing their problems until after they heard you speak. And now they're going to try to get rid of that stress. And I would bet you they're going to see some incredible results. Not saying everybody, but I'm saying if you can reduce stress as much as you possibly can out of your life, I'm telling you, it's going to make a difference, right, Dr. Taylor?
Yeah. Now, I always say my 4-step process with stress is, the best treatment for stress is to get rid of the stress. Okay. It's a bad job. It's a bad marriage. It's a bad some other type relationship. Get rid of the stress. And sometimes stress can be over exercise. It can also be a stress. So, a lot of marathon runners, they don't live very long. A lot of these top level bodybuilders and stuff, they don't live very long because they're actually stressing their body out by taking it to the maximum of its capability. So first, get rid of the stress. If you cannot get rid of the stress, then you have to change how you respond to the stress. I'm not telling everybody to get divorced because their husband or wife is stressing them out. You have to change how you respond to the stress. You're going to have to accept, hey, my husband's not going to necessarily always put the seat down on the toilet or whatever. Just it's not the end of the world. You don't have to go crazy every time he does that. So you try and change how you respond to the stress. If you got kids, get grandma over to take, so you can go out to dinner with your husband or whatever, because sometimes you can't get rid of the stress. The third thing is you have to repair the damage caused by the stress, whether it's a suppressed immune system, your gut's not working well, your cortisol is out of whack. You have to repair the damage caused by the stress. The fourth thing is you have to prepare for future stress. You've got to make sure your body is able to withstand, because you're going to have more stressors in your life. You have to make sure that your body is able to withstand future stressors. So once you build yourself back up, you have to maintain that ability to resist stress. So that's kind of my 4-step stress relief program. And sometimes to repair the damage caused by stress, that's when you may have to go see a functional medicine physician. And they actually look at cortisol levels. Sometimes if it's really bad, you may need some IV nutritional therapy. There are also adrenal supplements that you can take, because the adrenal gland is what makes cortisol, which is the stress hormone. So sometimes that's when you need a functional medicine doc when you're talking about stress. Because if you go to a primary care doc and you tell them you're under stress, they're going to give you an antidepressant, a sleeping pill, but that's symptom chasing. Okay. And, a lot of people will say that they're stressed out, but they're not necessarily depressed. So, but antidepressants is what you're usually going to get. So you're going to have to go to someone who can actually understand what you're trying to communicate to them. And I'll tell you another thing. A lot of times stress is labeled as chronic fatigue. And that is, again, chronic fatigue is just a description of a symptom. So in order to be diagnosed with chronic fatigue, all you have to do is go into the doctor's office and say, I'm tired all the time. Well, that's what chronic fatigue is. They just renamed what you said, because chronic means all the time and fatigue means tired. You said, I'm tired all the time. They said you had chronic fatigue. Well, you need to tell the doctor, tell me something I don't know. Tell me, why am I tired all the time?
Exactly.
Yeah. And so that can definitely be a cortisol or a stress issue. So there's a lot of labels out there. Even, and now this may be a little bit controversial, but even things like ADHD, that's just a description. That's attention deficit. I have trouble paying attention. That can also be a cortisol issue. If you are hypersensitive, that means your cortisol or your stress level is higher than it needs to be for the situation. And that's labeled ADHD. But there's ways to lower that so that those symptoms can go away. So medicine has become descriptive instead of causation based.
Well, speaking of stress, I told you we've been getting a lot of letters from men
Hmm.
when it comes to erectile dysfunction.
Yeah.
And it seems like a lot of men just have a hard time saying it.
Yeah.
I don't think they realize there's a lot of men walking around with ED,
Yeah.
and you actually treat ED, if that's
Yeah.
the right word for it. And
Yeah.
we've really never talked about it on the show, but I was really surprised how many emails we get. So we got to kind of touch on ED today. What do you do if someone walks into your office who
Yeah.
has ED?
Well, I'm not a urologist, so if it's a serious condition, then they need to see a urologist. But
Right.
I would tell you, stress again is always involved, and most men can understand. I mean, especially when you're younger, maybe in your, sowing wild oats days. You're with some. If men can relate to this, you're with some girl who you think is, a little bit better than your normal dating person, and she wants to get intimate, and you're so excited and anxious about it, just don't work. It's called performance anxiety. So stress can cause it where you cannot have an erection because there's two parts of your nervous system. Your sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight, what makes you anxious, so you're anxious about what's going on, and your parasympathetic, which is what we call your rest and digest. Well, in order for your blood vessels to relax, to let blood go into the penis, you have to have parasympathetic activity. You have to be relaxed in order for that to happen. So if you become too anxious, and a lot of times what will happen is a man will have an episode where he has erectile dysfunction, and now he becomes so anxious about it, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Every time he attempts to have sex, he's so anxious that he's not going to be able to have an erection, that he ends up having an erection. Well, there's one thing there's a peptide called PT-141 or bremelanotide that men can use. They give themselves an injection in some fat tissue, not in the penis, and they administer it 6 to 8 hours before they think they're going to have intercourse. But it lasts for 72 hours. It stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system so that it functions better, so that the parasympathetic can allow an erection to happen. So that's a simple case of erectile dysfunction. There's another treatment you can have. It's called acoustic shockwave therapy, where you emit sound waves to the penis and it breaks up plaque, which could be blocking the blood vessels. It causes an increase in nitric oxide, which helps blood vessels to dilate. And that's a very, a simple procedure. It's a little bit more expensive. And usually people need more than one treatment. Those are the two basic ones. One, I try and get guys to realize that they may be making themselves have ED because they're so anxious about it. So that's one. The bremelanotide, which helps to increase the parasympathetic activity. And then there is the acoustic shockwave therapy. And then the fourth one is something called a P shot. And I don't know if you've heard of stem cells or
Yes.
PRP, that if tissue is really damaged, and sometimes guys with hypertension or diabetes, that their blood vessels are so damaged and the tissue is so damaged, they can actually take stem cells, inject that into the penis, and you can actually grow new penile tissue. So that would be the most severe cases. So going from just relaxation techniques to the PT-141, which is a peptide, to the acoustic shockwave therapy, and then to the P shot. So that would be the kind of progression of treatment for erectile dysfunction.
In your practice, Dr. Taylor, how far do you go with treating ED?
We go all the way to the P shot. Now,
Okay.
urologist, and then the other underlying situation you need to look at. Sometimes erectile dysfunction is what we call the canary in the coal mine. That it's the first indication that someone may have cardiovascular disease. So I would, advise anybody who has significant ED, like I say, if it's just relaxation, that's not a big deal. But anything further than that, they may want to see the cardiologist or go to their primary care physician, make sure they have an EKG, make sure, if there's any indication of cardiovascular disease, that they see a cardiologist. So ED, this is what I'll tell you, men can go around and have chest pain for years as long as their penis works. When their penis stops working, it's automatically an emergency. That's the one thing that guys will come to the doctor for. So you want to take that opportunity, if you're a doc, that you got that guy here, he's worried about one thing, but you want to make sure there's nothing serious going on behind the scenes. So you always have to keep that in mind when you have a guy coming in with erectile dysfunction.
Well, I've discovered another thing I like about how you practice, Dr. Taylor. You stay in your lane.
Yeah.
That's probably the best way to put it. Yeah. Because, you're saying, if there's something I cannot treat, like a heart attack, you need to go to a cardiologist.
Right. Yeah. So,
it's in your own right, though, too.
Yeah. I tell patients, look, I know what I know, and I know what I don't know. And I'll tell you what I don't know and who you may go see. And again, I've been on both sides of the fence. I got traditionally trained. I did traditional OBGYN for over 10 years. So I know both sides of the railroad track, So I'm not anti-medicine. I'm not all about, beads and seances and, incense.
You're not. Yeah, you are.
Yeah,
you're right.
I'm not at either extreme. I would consider myself a moderate. I'm probably more to the left than to the right, but I've been on both sides of the train track. So I know that there's a lot of benefits in modern medicine, but there's a lot of shortcomings in modern medicine also. So I try to be aware of both sides of the coin.
Well, like I start off the show, we are so lucky to have you, and because I think what you're doing is so important. Dr. Taylor is going to be doing a show in all of our markets: our Philadelphia, Los Angeles, Atlanta, Florida, Texas, and tell your friends about the show, tell your relatives about the show, and Dr. Taylor's actually with us twice each month for Atlanta, and now I can say Georgia because we're getting letters from all over Georgia. Let's tell people how they can reach you, Dr. Taylor, if they're listening to the radio now.
Yeah, my practice email is info. The name of my practice is Taylor Medical Group. So my website is taylormedicalgroup.net. So taylormedicalgroup.net. Office phone number is 678-443-4000. The easiest way to contact me is go to the website, and you can send us an email at info@taylormedicalgroup.net. Actually, all those emails come to my phone, so I see those.
Make sure you put .net in.
Yeah, .net. It's not .com. I think you'll go to a lawyer's. Yeah, I think you'll get a lawyer's website if it's .com. So yeah, make sure you do .net.
Dr. Taylor, we can't thank you enough. You are definitely God sent, and we will see you soon.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right, and you get better. All right.
Thank you.
All right.
That's
okay.
Dr.
Bye-bye.
Eldred Taylor. We're going to be back with you again next week with more Ask the Experts. We are now going to be adding Los Angeles. We are in Dallas. We're in Houston. We're in Tampa. We're in Palm Beach, Florida. We're in Philadelphia. We're in Atlanta, and we're getting ready to open up in Los Angeles. And tell your friends about the show, and click on the like on the show, and we will keep bringing you great educational information from great experts. We will see you all next week with more Ask the Experts.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.